What's going on, guys? Mickle here, and there are some huge decisions coming down the pipeline in the Ripple SEC case. In this video, we're going to be talking about exactly what these decisions are and how they have the potential to impact this case going forward. I have been saying on this channel consistently that we are not going to see a massive advancement in this case until these two huge decisions are made by the court, because I believe both parties are likely waiting to see how this decision plays out, to see how strong their case is going to be going forward. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys both sides and how this decision really impacts this case going forward. Guys, I'm also going to be showing you guys what I believe to be the most interesting thing about this entire Ripple SEC case. If you don't currently think that this entire case has been set up or a show, I believe what I'm going to be showing you in this video could change your mind. I definitely think you guys are going to want to stick around for that, because I believe it is the biggest question mark hanging over this case right now. If you guys are new to this channel or come here all the time, make sure to like and subscribe. It is a great way you can help support this channel for free and means so much to me. If you guys do not have an Uphold account already, make sure to sign up using the link in the description below. With that said though, let's jump right into it, and I hope you guys enjoy the content. We currently have some massive decisions coming down the pipeline in the Ripple SEC case. These decisions are really going to lay the groundwork for whether we're going to see a settlement or this thing is going to go to the distance. The worse this goes for the SEC, the more likely they are going to be to try to drive a settlement, because they are not going to want to take a loss in court to Ripple and possibly create a framework for every other cryptocurrency company to follow and ultimately beat the SEC. This current lawsuit has huge power implications for the SEC, and that's why these upcoming decisions are going to be so critical to how this case moves forward. Right here we have John Deaton, and he says, "We are currently waiting on Judge Torres' ruling on the motion to strike fair notice defense and individual defendants' motion to dismiss. I also believe Judge Netburn's ruling on the 63 emails and the Estabrook notes come down any day." So these are really the huge motions we're currently waiting on. The motion to strike the fair notice is going to be huge. Fair notice defense is essentially just an all-encompassing idea that Ripple was never told what they were doing wasn't allowed, so it's almost like a dismissal of the entirety of the case. This is going to be huge, and the SEC is currently trying to go to the court and saying Ripple should not be allowed to argue this. Everything we've seen thus far is telling us that Ripple should be allowed to argue it, and so far all the different lawyers' opinions we've gotten all think Ripple will win this point. We are still waiting for a decision on this, and it's likely, in my opinion, that once Ripple wins this motion from the court, the SEC will be in a much more incentivized position to settle this case, because they are going to now know that Ripple will be able to argue the very obvious fact that no one ever told them XRP was a security, so why should they think XRP was a security? We also have the 63 emails surrounding Bill Hinman's Ethereum free pass speech. The judge needs to make a determination on whether or not this free pass speech was all Bill Hinman's personal opinion or it was SEC guided. No matter which way this one falls, I believe it's going to be negative for the SEC. Either they're going to have to compare Ethereum to XRP and say why Ethereum isn't a security and XRP is, which is impossible, or they're going to have to hand over all the emails to Ripple and all the different connections Bill Hinman had to the Ethereum Alliance. I think Ripple's likely sitting on this and seeing which evidence they're going to have given over to them, but either way, I think this one falls in Ripple's favor, and they're likely just taking their time and seeing which way this plays out and where they're going to take this case next. The last thing we have coming down the road is the Estabrook notes. This has to do with Jay Clayton, Elad Roisman meeting with Brad Garlinghouse, and Brad Garlinghouse has told us in the past that at this meeting, Elad Roisman actually told him that XRP is not a security, and he felt bad that Brad Garlinghouse even had to come to the SEC to discuss something that in his opinion didn't need to be discussed. This is obviously extremely exculpatory for the SEC and kind of demolishes their entire case against Ripple. I've seen lawyers kind of going both ways on this, whether or not they believe Ripple will be able to get these notes. I think these are are going to be huge for the case going forward, because if Ripple gets these notes, the SEC is likely going to lose the case flat out. But if Ripple doesn't get these notes, the SEC is going to be in a much better position to settle this case with maybe some factors still in their favor. Maybe they get more money, we're going to have to see, but this is a huge decision coming down the pipeline, because if one of the SEC commissioners was telling Ripple during the process that the SEC suit alleges Ripple was doing something wrong, if one of the commissioners was telling Ripple, no, you're actually doing everything right, and what you're doing isn't illegal at all, XRP isn't a security, well, that defeats their entire case. So this is obviously a huge motion. So now that we know what motions we have coming down the pipeline, when can we expect them to take place? And this was a huge thing that John Deaton mentioned today. John Deaton actually says that there is a 6-month list that could guarantee these rulings by the end of the month. And essentially what this is every single year, 2 times a year, federal judges submit a list to Congress of the motions pending for 6 months or longer. The next list is due March 31st. If Judge Torres doesn't issue a ruling on the pending motion, she must report these motions for inclusions on the 6-month list. So John Deaton is making the astute observation that a lot of these decisions have already been overdue for a long time, and Judge Torres is likely going to make a decision on these very soon. On top of this, at the end of March, she's going to have to submit a list to Congress of all her open litigation claims that have been open for longer than 6 months, which all of these claims have been. John Deaton thinks it's highly probable that rather than keeping these things open and having to submit this list to Congress, she's likely just going to make the decisions this month as these claims are overdue anyway, and that way she does not have to bring this list to Congress. From what I understand, lawyers typically like closing out all these open claims so they don't have to submit the list. So John Deaton thinks it's highly probable all these huge decisions are going to be made by the end of this month. This is huge because once these decisions are made, both parties will know which way the court is ruling and will be able to better gauge how to proceed with a settlement going forward. It is much harder to make a settlement when you don't know which side is winning. Once these rulings are made, it's going to be very obvious which way the court is leaning, and will give the two parties a better idea of, say, is Ripple going to get the high side of the fine or the low side of the fine? And that's the kind of settlement negotiations we need to be pushed into place, and the only way that's going to happen is once these huge rulings are made. Both these parties have already come such a long way, it doesn't make sense to start speculating or start drafting settlements. Maybe they've already drafted settlements, but finalizing it before you know all the final decisions. Let's keep moving though, and I want to get into what I believe is one of the most fascinating things about all of Ripple, and that is the high quality people from all over the US government, the US Treasury, the US Federal Reserve, who all make their way to Ripple. I have never seen a company with the caliber of people that Ripple recruits, and I wanted to show you this video because I believe this perfectly plays into what I'm saying.
For those of you who don't know, the next gen $100 note is the last denomination of that particular family of notes. We're working on the future generation of currency, so that is my other job.
What you just watched was a former member of the Treasury who has her name on almost every single dollar bill in circulation around the world, directly telling you that at her next job, she's going to be working to create the future of money. And where does she go? She goes directly to the board of Ripple. It is insane the caliber of people Ripple recruits. It's almost like it was all a plan to put these high level in place at the next company that will be used to change the US financial system. And it's not just her. We also have Craig Phillips, who worked at BlackRock for over 12 years and helped custody almost a third of the world's assets. Who goes from BlackRock to a company like Ripple unless there's a larger plan at place? You also have Sandy O'Connor, who also worked at the Federal Reserve and Treasury and worked at JP Morgan for over 35 years. These are not places you leave on a whim. These are places you leave to go somewhere or go to a company that is changing the world and going to be a bigger player than these already established giants. This is huge, and And what I want to talk about now is why these people are going to Ripple, because I believe that is the most important thing we're going to talk about here. So this all goes into the idea that what we're watching was a plan to create clarity in the market. And you might be wondering, how is this lawsuit possibly creating clarity for the market? How could it possibly be good for Ripple? Well, I want to break those two things down for you, but first I want to show you that there is no doubt in my mind that there was some serious talk about this case happening before it was ever filed. Right here we see that this guy tweeted out this article from June 11, 2018, and he said Ripple Labs case will address key cryptocurrency questions. First of all, how did he know this case was coming? And he's literally foreshadowing the idea that this case will be used to make future regulations. In here, he says, we may have to come back to our friends from the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. Think who's on Ripple's board we just talked about, and ask for additional legislation. Until then, we eagerly await to see what the courts will say. So this guy is literally telling us back in 2018, before the Ripple lawsuit was even made public, that this lawsuit was going to be key in deciding key issues in the cryptocurrency space and is going to create the basis for regulation going forward. He says we might have to go back and improve on some things, touch on some details, but this is the case that's going to lay the groundwork. So how is this so good for Ripple? Well, I kind of broke it down in an overly simplified diagram, but I think it makes it easier. So before this case started, there was virtually zero path for XRP to have any status outside of ambiguity. Everyone knew that XRP was in a regulatory purgatory, and this prevented banks and financial institutions in the US from fully using it. So XRP was fully getting the big X before this lawsuit took place, and there was no signs of clarity coming. But after this lawsuit, it actually turned this certain X into a yes or no equation. It put yes on the table because this lawsuit has the ability to solve the uncertainty problem. Suddenly, X isn't the only answer. No is not the only answer, and uncertainty is going to leave. Rather now, and I think Ripple's going to win, but taking it from the most pessimistic view possible, now you have a 50-50 chance, and no matter what, 100% chance of XRP having certainty. It's either a security or not. And whether or not it even matters if it's declared a security, which I don't think it will be, this is going to give banks and financial institutions the certainty they need to deal with the asset. Before this lawsuit, there was an 100% chance that XRP was going to get zero clarity. Now there's a 100% chance XRP will get clarity. Whether or not it's the result we want doesn't matter. Clarity is coming, and it wasn't coming before this case was filed. I just tried to drive this home for you, and let me show you why this could actually be a very beneficial thing. And I think it's so crazy because just listen to Gary, what Gary Gensler says here, and then I'm going to break it down.
Can a security token transform to be something else? And a group of venture capitalists went into the SEC 10 days ago. They've circulated paperwork to a lot of people, and they're sort of saying, believe us, we get you, we're with you, SEC, but we have a bunch of clients that are going to evolve to be a consumable token. I kind of don't think this is going to work. I don't think there's any precedent in the law for a security to transform to be something else. But this is an issue on the table, and it's a worthy debate.
So at the end, he kind of goes off to say that at the end of the day, he thinks it's all securities, and he doesn't think any of these tactics are going to work by trying to make something not a security. Well, this was the guy who was ultimately going to become chair of the SEC and ultimately going to try to take control of the entire cryptocurrency space and make it all securities. Well, what do you know? Right before Gary Gensler comes in and has the potential to take all these coins that are in this ambiguity state and say, you know what? these are all securities. Ripple gets this lawsuit dropped on them, and suddenly they are now deciding their own destiny. Rather than Gary Gensler coming in and saying, you know what, this is all securities, I've made my decision, now the courts are going to decide based on facts. Is XRP a security? Yes or no? And this is what I mean by this lawsuit kind of saved XRP, because now rather than this guy who's been saying from 2018 it's all securities, now the courts are going to decide. And that's why I think this is such a slept on issue, and why it seems like it's so crazy to me that Ripple has all these high level people coming to them during the lawsuit. We have people foreshadowing the fact that this lawsuit was going to happen before it was even filed, and then we find out that this lawsuit may end up benefiting Ripple way more than it ever hurt them. These are the things that make me think this was all a plan, and I find this so interesting. And I think last of all, before we end this video, the SEC knew they had no chance of winning this lawsuit. Decades of securities law were against them. They lost a Telegram case in which they said the Gram token is not the security. Either the SEC has the dumbest lawyers in history who didn't know how to litigate this case and just made up random assumptions and threw them at Ripple and said, all right, let's see what happens, or they filed this case knowing they were going to lose some issues because the facts were wrong from the start, but the whole purpose of it made the win not matter. It was to create clarity. It was never about winning. It was never about justice. It was to form regulations Congress wasn't making. Guys, thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed this video. For now, Mickle out.